Welcome back to another Sketch With Me video. The piece you see in front of you is based on some reference imagery that I got off Pinterest, so full disclosure, these are not my ideas, they are just simply images that I thought were inspiring, and so I chose to recreate them in my sketchbook. What I want to talk about today is perfectionism, and I thought that this was very fitting for that conversation because when it came to actually adding watercolor to the underlying sketch here, it actually took me several months to sit down and actually apply watercolor to the sketch you see. Oftentimes, perfectionism on the internet is described as the fear of failure because I have applied the standard of perfection to my work. And so because I know I can't achieve perfection, I don't even bother to try. But I think the more important question to ask ourselves is not whether we're experiencing perfectionism, but rather, let's go back to this idea that we've told ourselves we must perform perfectly. Well, why would we put that standard upon ourselves? We know it's irrational. We know that we cannot perform perfectly. In my own journey, what I have discovered is that I have a fear of critique. That I know that if I put something out there into the world, whether it be on the internet or whether I just choose to show some friends or whether I make a video on it, that I'm going to be critiqued for the work that I ultimately put onto page. And what I'm truly fearful of is the negative feedback. So I chose to take a step back and really analyze that and try to understand how can I break the pattern of being fearful of being critiqued, especially critiqued negatively. Well, I had to remind myself that even in a perfect world, which does not exist, and even if I were capable of performing perfectly in said perfect world, which again, not possible, it wouldn't matter. Someone would still look at this work and say, not my cup of tea. So if I can rationalize to myself that the work that I do will not please every consumer or every viewer, then I can also tell myself that it doesn't really matter. My why in why I do artwork isn't so that the whole world will accept everything that I create, because that's impossible. I do this because I love painting. I love drawing. I love sharing this work, and I love meeting and talking to people who also happen to have a similar interest in similar styles. So when thinking about perfectionism, rather than just addressing that we have perfectionism, which altogether is more or less a result of something inside, it's this idea that I've gone and applied a standard that I know I cannot achieve, understand why you're applying that standard. It will be different for everybody, and maybe like me, you also are fearful of negative critiques, that if someone sees this work, you're going to receive feedback that you don't like. And if that's the case, try to break yourself of that belief system that you have to please every person that sees your work. That's literally impossible. You're not going to please every consumer, every viewer. And let yourself do the work because it's something that you're interested in, and because we also know that while not everybody will think this is their cup of tea, this is something they want to look at, there is a group out there that does want to look at your work. So after rationalizing this to myself, I was able to sit down and decide it doesn't matter if this turns out perfect. It's a loose watercolor drawing, and so I'm just going to let it be what it is. Perfectly imperfect. I think for a lot of us, we like that whimsical look because it is imperfect, because it does show a human element that a person created this by hand. There's something to be said for when you see an AI generated image, you know that a computer did it. And there's just something very dissatisfying about that. But when you see work that's created by an actual person, most of us can tell there is a distinction. And because of that, the imperfections in work, it's the thing that makes it relatable. In recent months, I've gotten into the habit of opening up to a blank sketch page and just letting myself experiment and not really caring about the end result. Experimenting with supplies, drawing silly pictures that don't make a lot of sense, not really using reference images but just enjoying the process. I've allowed myself to get away from this idea that every time I sit down I have to produce a perfect piece of artwork. I've talked a little bit about this in my last sketchbook video where I talked about the use of sketchbooks. That also helps to break perfectionism, allowing yourself just to have fun in your sketchbook, draw whatever you feel like, and have absolutely no aim in mind. So in conclusion, remember that applying a standard is only part of the equation. It's why do you apply the standard? Explore that, understand it, and address it. Remember, set yourself free from the idea of perfect artwork.